Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the next in our series of Travel Weekly webcasts that we're bringing to you during this period when many of us are working from home. Now, we've been doing a number of these that have been focusing on the challenges to people's businesses, of course, but there's another impact of this COVID-19 crisis, and that is, of course, on people's mental health. It's putting an awful lot of strain on people. So we brought together today three people to talk about some of those challenges. So I'm joined today by Kieran Hartwell, who is head of corporate at Travel Counsellors, who's leading a number of the support initiatives for that company. I'm joined by Shane Riley, who is associate vice president of international sales at Voyages. And I'm joined by Chris O'Sullivan, who is head of business development and engagement at the Mental Health Foundation. So hello, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Really, really important side effect of this issue, and I'm really glad you've had the time to join us today. Chris, let's start with you. Perhaps you can outline some of the issues. I imagine you're probably busier than ever dealing with this situation.
Yeah, absolutely, Lucy. Look, this pandemic is something that to some extent has taken us by surprise, but is, we think, going to be one of the biggest challenges to our mental health of our generation and possibly multiple generations. It causes us to feel all sorts of things that we're not necessarily used to feeling or maybe able to name. So we have emotions that are perfectly normal emotions like fear and anxiety and grief, and many of us don't know where to put those. So there is a lot of heightened tension at the moment about well-being and what we will do and what the things we can't do because of the regulations are. And it's important to recognize at this time that it's perfectly normal to feel distressed. But there are some people who experience distress because of existing mental health problems or other challenges who need to be looked after all the more. And in work time, that includes making sense of new realities and adapting to things very quickly.
Okay. All right. And have you, I know you've been issuing a lot of guidance. We've been sharing some of that in our resource centre on Travel Weekly. But have you had to bring out specific guidance, Chris, or is it just really raising awareness of all the resources and support that you have available already?
Yeah, we decided fairly early on to produce a microsite on our website with a lot of different articles about different aspects of mental health during the outbreak. That is mentalhealth.org.uk/coronavirus. So in that place, you'll find general tips about our mental health in this time. You'll find information about work and making working from home work for you. You'll find information on different ways to look after your mental health when you're isolating. And you'll find other bits of information on things like domestic violence, for example, or debt, some of the challenging things which we know are issues that people need help with and that are relevant out there.
Okay, we'll come back to pick up on some of those in a minute. One of the things you mentioned there was anxiety. Clearly, it's all rolled on with fear. None of us knows when this is going to end. We've got all sorts of challenges that come from this. If I bring Shane in, Shane, you actually contacted me suggesting that we do one of these webinars because I know that anxiety is something that's very close to you personally. So you obviously felt that we should be raising more awareness. I mean, we've been doing it anyway at Travel Weekly, talking about mental health, but you obviously felt that you wanted to contact us because you thought the need was even greater. Tell us why.
Yeah, so without a doubt, Travel Weekly have been doing an amazing job to raise awareness of mental health in general. I think for me, I guess in some ways I consider myself lucky, the fact that I'm probably further on in kind of my anxiety journey than many people that may be experiencing that now for the first time. And I think we're in a very unusual time that normally, I guess, anxiety is triggered by very kind of significant things. And there's a lot of significant things happening right now. So for me, anxiety kind of triggers itself from health anxiety. But right now, we've got things like people worrying about their security, their freedom, their liberty, being able to move around like we would normally be able to do, but fear for jobs, fear for their friends and family. So my biggest concern really was the fact that this has potential to be something that kind of happens under the radar almost. And I've seen a lot of people already in the industry reaching out and talking about their struggles. And I almost describe it as kind of this roller coaster ride. And we talk about the pandemic, about kind of trying to flatten the curves. And for me, I'm trying to help people and trying to help myself to flatten my own curves of these these waves of anxiety that come along. And I guess that they're completely natural in the time that we're facing. But I think it's really important that we allow people the opportunity to discuss it and acknowledge the fact that many people have maybe never considered themselves to be somebody that would really kind of suffer with mental health, for want of a better term. But now I think there are people out there that are realizing that they are struggling, because there's so many things that people are having to worry about, and they've all hit us at once. And it is a really difficult thing to kind of get your head around.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, let's bring Kieran in. Kieran, I know you've not been at Travel Counsellors very long, and clearly a bit of a baptism of fire, but you've been leading some of the support initiatives. You've obviously got a very big organisation, huge, hundreds of staff at head office, and then obviously lots and lots of travel counsellors running their own businesses. So I mean, we've touched on all the different things that could be worrying people, but perhaps you can go through what you're seeing in terms of your organisation. Is it mainly the financial concerns, or is there other things at play?
No, I think there's a lot of things that Shane, I was just listening to what you were saying. A lot of that resonates with what I've been hearing from many of our travel counsellors. That's not the immediate gut reaction is to worry about money, right? And start thinking, how am I going to earn money? How do I make a living? And then there's kind of the soul destroying second layer of, well, we've spent months and years potentially making some of these bookings, taking care of our customers, and then now we're having to invest an equal amount of effort to unwind all of that, to make sure people are repatriated. And then there's the future worry of, is that going to come back? If so, is it going to come back in the same capacity? And how do we build ourselves back up? And that's particularly prevalent in a business like Travel Counsellors, where you've got 2,000 self-employed franchisees who are out running their own independent businesses. So we've been focused really on trying to support them via 3 different tiers. So obviously the budgeting and finance part is important. Well-being and mental health, we provide counselling services via a third party within the organisation. And we've also got over 100 of our employees trained as mental health first aiders, which is an initiative that we've had in place for the last 12 months or so, and something we think is really important. And then the third stream is really about using the time for learning and development, right? So making sure that when we've got this downtime, we're staying engaged, we're trying to keep busy and keep our minds active for the most part. So that's really what our focus has been. We're a little split because we've obviously got a number of employees from head office that have been furloughed. So we're trying to make sure that we're staying engaged with that cohort and taking care of that group in a slightly different way than the franchisees who are obviously independently running their own business. So it's been great to watch, just one final thought, sorry. It's been great to watch within the community, there's kind of these micro communities setting themselves up within Travel Counsellors. So there was a pub quiz night that took place the other night. And I know there's a lot of people within the group having virtual coffee mornings and various different things like that. So there are lots of new ideas springing up. But there's probably a lot more that we could be doing. So keen to hear thoughts from yourself, Shane, and Chris on that.
Well, let's bring Chris back in. I mean, Shane made the point, Chris, that you may not think you're the kind of person that would suffer from mental health, and you may not have any symptoms or anything at the moment, but what would you be encouraging people to do if they are on their own? I mean, even if they don't feel anxious, should they be joining groups and keeping in touch and keeping engaged? Is there any sort of practical advice for people who have been furloughed or, as we all are now, sort of working from home?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that really resonated with me there. Certainly, Shane, your point about people not recognizing perhaps that they have had a challenge with anxiety or something, and now it's okay to say that or okay to feel that. I think that's definitely almost a positive from this. People are able to talk about how they're feeling about things when perhaps that might have been difficult before. And Kieran, your range of initiatives sound exactly like the kind of things that we're advocating in the workplace. I think one of the things that's really important is to find ways to look after your mental health and to recognize that your mental health is something that you need to attend to in times like this. So we have our ways to look after your mental health, but some of those are a bit of a challenge at times like this, things like meeting up. So the core tips that we have for looking after your mental health and well-being at home: plan your day. So look at what you want to achieve, what you're going to do, make sure that you've got a routine, even if it's a different routine. And when it comes to work, recognize that sometimes a home working day has a different rhythm than an office working day or a client working day or a traveling day. And don't be too harsh on yourself, particularly not at the beginning, because we're still fairly new to this working at home thing. If you don't get every single thing on your task list done, I think Jeff Bezos said once that a good working day was 3 good decisions. So if you try and set out what you'd like to get done and what you need to get done, and you fall somewhere in between those, then that can be good. And don't beat yourself up if you don't get to do those. Move every day is really a really important one as well. So we hopefully still, by the time this goes out, we'll still have our ability to have our exercise. But exercise is extremely important, and it can be getting out and about, which is important if that's good for you. But for many of us, if we're shielded or we have symptoms, we're in our houses, so we need to look at ways of doing that. And I think Joe Wicks has now become universal across the country, but ways of getting out there. Trying relaxation techniques. Often we say we don't have time to do things like yoga or mindfulness or other kinds of things because we have busy lives, and maybe we have time to look at those, and there's some of those on our website. Connecting with others and maintaining those connections. So trying to use things like Zoom, for example, which are on now, or other techniques to keep in touch with video. And I really liked the things you were saying, Kieran, about virtual lunches and coffees. And there's lots of people who are trying new things. And we really hope that those things will carry on, and the spirit of those things will carry on when we go back to our offices. But simple things like having buddy meetings, having social stuff, including people who have been furloughed in social activities. And there's some discussion about what you can and can't do in relation to work-related activities when you're on furlough. But I think I would be encouraging people informally to be in touch with their colleagues whilst they are on furlough. And as long as they're not doing work-related activity, the social aspect should be able to carry on. And finally, I think sleep is extremely important. Sleep is one of the most important things we can all do for our mental health. And at times like this, it's both challenged, and we have an opportunity to find a new way of sleeping. So if we can prioritize sleeping and making sure we get enough good quality sleep and slightly less Netflix, then that can be great. But the top line for me is always go easy on yourself, reflect, try and find a silver lining. Certainly for us, it was my 5-year-old's birthday on Friday, and whilst I normally take the day off, because we were in the house together, we had more quality time, fewer presents because people had to think about it, and we had a Zoom call with 9 households, and we wouldn't have done that if we weren't working at home. So there's something about family, and there's something about new ways of working and finding time to adjust, which is really helpful for our mental health.
I saw your Twitter post actually about your daughter's birthday. It was lovely. But you raise a point, don't you? Lots of people are at home now with their children. You are, Shane. You've got your son who's only little and probably distracting you all the time. And I imagine many travel counsellors are now juggling, trying to run their businesses as well as trying to homeschool with the kids somewhere in the house. I'm in the same situation. So how are you helping or advising them at travel counsellors, Kieran? Are you sort of providing any sort of resource to help with that?
Well, yeah, we just have to keep it real, right? I have a dear colleague who will frequently preemptively apologize about his kids. You know, no, just bring them in. It's fine. You know, we're all in this. We're all in the same boat. I have my youngest daughter's 10 today, so we've celebrated her birthday. Yeah. So we celebrated her birthday over the weekend. So I was listening attentively to what Chris was saying there, and we ended up doing a virtual sleepover. So amazing. I have 2 daughters, right? So a lot of the sleepover involved playing truth or dare, doing face masks, all that type of stuff. I'm from a family of all boys, so getting down with what 12 and 10-year-old girls do is a whole new world, right? They're not too impressed probably with my sleeping habits either, Chris, because I fall asleep on the sofa most nights early because I'm worn out, probably from all of the anxiety related to what we're all respectively going through at the moment. But no, we're very, we do a lot of engagement with the TCs, with families and with children. We have something called TCTV, which is an in-house TV channel, which we're actually streaming every day at the moment. And I would say probably a third of the show is made up of home videos and clips and pictures and engagement with TCs and their kids, or travel counsellors and their kids who are working from home with them. Actually, straight after this, I'm just about to record a video interview where my eldest daughter, Izzy, who's 12, is going to interview me for TCTV. I have no idea what she's going to ask me. There's nothing canned about it, so we're just going to have to see how that goes. But yeah, we're just trying to, not put too much pressure on ourselves, right? And encourage.
Just as Chris was saying, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And
Shane,
your girls are going to get.
Go on.
I was going to say to you, Kieran, your girls will get a massive amount from that contact with their dads. I have 2 girls as well, but that idea. Lots of dads don't spend a lot of time with their 10-year-old and their 13-year-old girls, and this is a big thing for young, preteens and teens, in terms of this being a massive challenge and this being a period where they develop so much socially. So where we can spend that time and where our employers are understanding of the need to be there for our children's mental health, we are protecting and improving their mental health in a time of great challenge, and that's the most important work any of us parents ever do.
Yes, spot on. Exactly right.
Absolutely. Shane, Chris mentioned there that it's important for employers to understand what their employees are going through when they're working from home. How is Virgin being as an employer through this situation?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we're very familiar with kind of working from home and having to connect via Zoom or whatever technology, because most of my colleagues are in the US. But one of the things that we've done, which I think has been a really big help for all of us, is we've identified a number of working groups and task forces for things that we want to get done during this time. And we've tried to look at this as we've been given the gift of time. And whilst it's really challenging, and whilst we would obviously love to be sailing and love to be running our holidays in the way that we planned, we've now got an opportunity to be able to address some of the things that we perhaps didn't have time to get right, or time to enhance things. So myself, my team, and everyone else within the sales organisation across the world, we've all been assigned different task forces. And that means that my team are getting an opportunity to get involved with things without me and getting an opportunity to get exposed to other areas of the business. I'm getting an opportunity to challenge my skill set and look at different opportunities of things that I would never have done before. So I think it's given us all a new sense of purpose, because we're all in a sales organization and we're used to being going out and visiting people, and we're all personable people. We want to spend time with our partners, our first mates, and get to know them and obviously help them develop their business. Whilst you can't do that, we needed to find a way to give ourselves a whole other purpose. And that is about now taking this time to make sure that we are developing the best opportunities and tools for our first mates in the future. So when the time to travel does come again, we'll be in the best possible position to be able to help our first mates to capitalize on that.
Which is similar to what you said, Kieran. One of your 3 pillars was training, wasn't it? So I guess keeping engaged, keeping your brain active, feeling useful.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think just going back to the kids talk as well, I think one of the things that actually gave me a really big boost, I was reading an article a few days ago, and they were saying actually my son's 4 this month, and they were saying if you actually asked him in 10 years' time what his impression of this time was, he'll probably say it's one of the best times of his life, because he's got a chance to spend time with us in the house. We've played loads of games. We've been making robot outfits out of cardboard boxes when the delivery order comes. So we've been doing everything that we can to try and do things differently that we perhaps never would have done before. So I hope that in a few years' time, we'll be able to look back and Mason would say, you know what, that was one of the best times. And we're lucky to work in travel, so we get to travel around the world and get to go to some amazing places. And that's probably one of the hardest things for all of us working in travel, that we can't go anywhere. But like I say, I hope in a few years' time that we'll be able to look back on this to say, this was a time that we made the most of it. Like, we made the most of this downtime, and we made the most to reconnect. And maybe it's a lesson for everybody that we need to take this time to reconnect and give ourselves time to really immerse ourselves into our families again, because I think we're all guilty of just moving a million miles an hour. So if this teaches us anything, it's got to be that.
Well, we even made pasta yesterday. I mean, when do I ever have time to do that? But we actually made pasta. I was just going to say, I mean, I agree with all your points, Shane. You make really good points, but that obviously applies if you're in a house with other people. There are plenty of people out there who are in a house on their own for whatever reason, whatever their circumstances are. And Chris, you right at the start, you raised some points around grief, you raised some points around domestic abuse. There are some perhaps more sinister impacts of this situation that we're having to think about at the moment. Hopefully people haven't experienced losing someone through to coronavirus, but everything we're being told on the news is that we're all likely eventually to have someone close to us that we may lose due to this. So just talk to us about what might be to come and how we can prepare for that.
I think we can be under no illusion that the worst is yet to come on this. I think it's extremely important that we're all putting in place or trying to put in place positives at the moment, things that will inoculate us, things that will help us to cope, but difficult times will come. And it's important to make sure that we have access to where we would go to get support and help on those. And there's a lot of referral sources on our website and on others. The charity sector and our essential services are likely to be extremely busy, but that doesn't mean that people shouldn't reach out for help if they need it. And one of the things we've heard time and again, and I've been speaking about on the media, is that GP surgeries are still open. There are still people you can talk to about all sorts of things, and you shouldn't feel that you shouldn't speak to people for fear of overwhelming services or being a burden on other people. We need to reach out. Loneliness and isolation are one of the biggest challenges of our time, and we're actually asking people to isolate and to stay away from other people. So finding ways to connect now that will carry us through the difficult times are important, and finding ways to engage with your community and to volunteer when you are well and can spare that time. And if businesses are able to help people to do that in some of their time, particularly also if they're furloughed, there's a real opportunity to get involved in community activities to reconnect some of those people who are isolated and shielding. And that is a challenge. It would be a challenge for people in travel as well. I know I've spoken several times in Travel Weekly about my dad, who's 40-year career in travel, because he's just turned 70, he's not allowed to leave the house, which meant he had to cancel several trips, and means he's doing a lot of things on video conferencing and also jigsaws, which I'd never would have thought of before. He's not a jigsaw kind of person, and I've probably outed him to the industry now. But being there for people that you know in your community, looking out for folk and trying to think of others at this time can be a great salve to our own selves when times are hard.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people that have volunteered to deliver medicines and essential items to people in their communities. So
I saw a great thing on Twitter yesterday, actually, with a BA. It was a BA first officer who was former Thomas Cook, who had gone across to BA and had hung up his 747 keys, and he's now delivering shopping for Tesco's on a voluntary basis. So that kind of passing it forward and seeing what you can do and learning from experiences that you have and can bring to bear for others is really good for our mental health and good for other people's as well.
Absolutely. Kieran, you mentioned there that you'd increased the frequency of your TCTV programs. I know you've been doing that through this period, but you've also set up a new welfare fund. What's that all about? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that actually, Lucy, that's been around for a while. It's been in place. It's something that we have in place to help TCs in extenuating circumstances, or actually anyone within our immediate community. But what we've done is we've just pumped some extra money into it that has come for a combination from our business, from directors' salaries, and also from our investors, Vitruvian. And there's essentially a pot of money, and the TCs are able to confidentially apply for grants from that, and we will grant money, because we recognise one of the biggest mental health problems is often related to money, right, immediately, and that's something that we feel that we can at least help kind of make an immediate impact with. So the welfare fund has been in place for quite a while. And like I say, we've just ramped it up and we've made it available to our furloughed employees, our colleagues, and also to all of the travel counsellors within the community. And it's really there to help with extenuating financial difficulties and circumstances. And so far, we've been distributing quite a bit of money through it already. So we're quite happy with how it's working. and it's certainly very well received within the community.
So that's good, because we talked, didn't we, about people being perhaps nervous to admit that they're having difficulty. So the fact that people are applying and you're distributing money and you're getting that engagement, you're seeing that as a good sign.
For sure. The bit for me that's actually more important, I think, is the fact that they've taken that first step, which is asking for help, and then we're able to use that as a lever to offer incremental help, whether that's counselling, whether that is connecting with some other travel counsellors, whether that's even taking a learning and development route, because quite often asking someone for help, as Chris probably knows, is the hardest thing, isn't it? The first thing to do.
Absolutely.
So if someone's willing to make that first step, it's a big move, especially to ask for help financially. Then we're trying to make sure that we're building on the back of that and using that as one of the levers, but then, you know, using several other ways of trying to help those individuals for a very difficult time.
Having the lowest possible.
Sorry, Chris.
Having the lowest possible gradient to being able to ask for help is really, really important. And you know, financial stigma around debt is almost as acute as the stigma around mental health. And when the two things collide, it can lead people into very dark places quite quickly. So it's great to hear that you're doing that. And actually most staff wellbeing programs now are looking at people's physical health, their financial health, and their mental health as one system. So it's great to hear that kind of initiative.
We're also trying to navigate all of the, it sounds a bit crude, but there are many people within this moment in time that are falling through the cracks. So trying to figure out how to provide help and support to them, whether they're employees that started working with us within the last 4 weeks, whether it is franchisees who have set up as a limited company, right, and are not quite sure how to navigate that dynamic. So we're just working on lots of different initiatives to try to provide as much support as we can. And I think it would teach all of us coming out the other side of this that whatever business continuity plan we thought we had in place for disaster recovery probably needed to be 10 or 20 times more extreme than it actually was when it was written. Okay,
that's interesting. Just going to come to you, Shane, but then I want to come back on that point. But just on the thing about asking for help, I know when you appeared on our video at our awards, which seemed a long time ago now, but you appeared on the video. Now, I know you were then inundated with people who came out of nowhere but felt they could talk to you because you'd been through something similar. And right in the first answer here, Shane, you said you've had lots of people contacting you through this incident. What are they contacting you specifically about? And, you know, are you able to help them yourself, or are you directing them onto people like Chris, or what are you doing?
It's really interesting because when we did the video at the Globes, it took me more than an hour to get from my table back to the stairs to work my way out, because people just kept stopping me and asking for assistance, or where did I get help from. And most of the things actually was quite surprising. A lot of people were quite surprised to say they were shocked that it was me, because 1 minute I'm on that video and then the next minute I'm on stage doing what we do.
Champagne,
And I think people are quite surprised that you just, because anxiety doesn't have to define you. You don't just become this one type of person that you see on an advert. Like you are who you are, and this just becomes part of you, like I said on the video. And I think people have reached out to me because of that, and they've kind of understood that this is not a one size fits all, and you don't have to be that type of that particular a single type of person to have anxiety or to have mental health issues. And I've reached out to a number of people who I know had reached out to me previously, and I thought at this time they're going to be finding life particularly tough. But I find for me, it's about making sure that you don't almost go into this black hole. It's very easy to go through social media, start speculating, and you go down into this hole. The next thing you know, we're not going to be traveling for the next 18 months. And then you find all these things, and you end up getting yourself into quite a pickle about it. So I think being selective about your news intake is really important. So obviously tracking Travel Weekly and keeping an eye on the news as it comes through, but don't go just trying to find it yourself, or trying to wallow in it, for want of a better term, and trying to find the answers, because the answers aren't there yet. So we just need to be comfortable being uncomfortable right now, because the answers aren't there. And I think we talked about sleep earlier, and it's really important. I purposely made sure that I've deleted all the news apps, so I get news when I want to get news rather than news being forced at me, because I was getting news all the time and it was worrying me constantly. And also then give yourself time to wind down at night. And maybe the news at 10 isn't the best thing for everybody to be watching. Some people may find that therapeutic or helpful. For me, I find that that's the last memory of my day, and for me, it doesn't help me. So, like Kieran, I end up falling asleep on the sofa quite a lot now. It's because of I guess it's that kind of release of you've had busy days, there's a lot on your mind, and sleep is so important. So I think it's really important for us to give ourselves that downtime and say, actually, I don't need to consume every single bit of news. What happened at the announcement at 5 o'clock is not really going to significantly change till 10 o'clock. And the reality is the news will be there the next morning as well.
Yeah.
So give yourself time not for it always to be on your mind.
Oh, great advice. Listen, we're coming very close to the end of our session, but I did just want to ask you, Chris, I mean, obviously we've got two people here, Travel Counsellors and Virgin, which are clearly supporting their staff through mental health, but there have been some concerns raised that actually, you know, all these great things that companies were doing with sessions and yoga and all these things they were putting on for staff at a time of crisis when money is tight for everyone, because nobody's getting income in, or very few companies are, that this might be the first thing to be cut, even though it's probably, you know, mental health support is more needed than ever. So is that a concern? Have you seen that at all? Is that something that we need to worry about, or are you hopeful and confident that companies will keep it up?
I'm hoping that obviously that they will keep up the things that work. Not all of those things need to cost money though. That things like virtual coffees and buddy schemes and stuff don't cost a lot of money. I think it is really important though that businesses try to continue to keep access to things like employee assistance programs, and to see whether we can get access to things like EAPs for people who are on furlough as well, because those schemes that provide access to things like counselling or debt advice through work are extremely important in helping people in difficult times. I'd like to think that companies aren't cutting those at the time of greatest need, but we are in difficult times, and we do need to think more about how we use the furloughing opportunity that exists and what we do to support people who are furloughed, to enable businesses to reconstitute themselves on the other side of this. I think we've seen 3 weeks where everybody's not known what's happened and everyone's been wondering what to do next, and that has included some businesses who've made quick decisions, ahead of government schemes coming out. And there is an opportunity to reconsider some of those now that we're getting used to this, and to make sure we're able to support people.
Travel Counsellors did just that, didn't you? Because you started the consultation process with your head office.
Yeah, well, we had to, like everyone else, we had to take very immediate corrective action to make sure that the company survives coming out the other side of it. But we were able to also equally very quickly unwind that. It was a redundancy process and transition those employees into furlough, which is great because it allows us a bit more time to see what happens when we come out the other side of this, and hopefully build the business back up.
Yeah, look, we all make mistakes at times like this. Nobody's ever done this before. It's a very difficult thing to do, and on an individual level and on a business level, we act as sometimes too quickly, sometimes not quickly enough to emerging uncertainties. And we need to cut ourselves a break and be compassionate to ourselves, whether we're leading a business or on our own in our own houses. We'll get through this if we learn from the mistakes that we make and the opportunities that we have. And as the Queen said yesterday, it will pass, and we will meet afterwards.
All right, well, listen, what a fantastic place to end it on, with a bit of optimism there. Guys, thank you so much for your honesty and for you sharing some of the practices that you're doing in your businesses, and Chris, obviously, for your continued support of mental health in the travel industry. We've been indebted to you. You've been fantastic for the last couple of years, and we really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. Let's hope things do get better, but we may be in this for some time, and I may wish to call on you again as we go through it. But for now, thank you to Kieran from Travel Counsellors, to Shane from Virgin Voyages, and to Chris from the Mental Health Foundation. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.